Hello, welcome to the eden8 podcast. I am recording this to go on YouTube, so if you see me on there, hello. And if that failed, then what can you do? But today, on the first episode, we're going to be talking about the classic argument of free will and determinism. So I'm just gonna outline what the arguments are like, what people thought. Just as a disclaimer, I've done more research on the predestination determinism side than I did on the free will side. But I can explain if you care. I have a booklet, one of these, if you can see. And it only covers the determinism stuff, and I don't know where the free will one is. So, what can you do? But yeah. Free will's very simple, I feel. Like, just people's, scholarly views on determinism is, way more vast because there's different theories, there's different ways how it works. But free will, everyone just has the same idea. It's boring. Because if you don't know what free will is, it's basically just the idea that we are moral agents and we can choose the good thing or the bad thing in any situation completely free of outside influences. So if I pick up this book again, I did that of my free will. It was a thought that just came into my mind. I did it, and that's that. And I guess something insignificant like a book club wouldn't have any effect. So I feel like I'm going to be talking about the butterfly effect a lot here, because I feel like the butterfly effect is important. Because if you believe in determinism, then I feel like everything in your life that has happened up to that point has not altered your life, but it's molded your life in some way. So even something as insignificant as me picking up this booklet and me talking about determinism is meant to flourish into something else. Like, if I didn't pick up the booklet, then somewhere down the line of future, maybe I wouldn't even be doing this podcast, right? So, so yeah, free will. I just do things, and I'm not, outwardly pressured by some factors that I will talk about, in order for me to make that decision. Whereas predestination is kind of a different term from determinism, because predestination is God has planned out your life and you're always destined to get somewhere. So we'll be talking about St. Augustine. Might touch on Calvin and Calvinism. I don't really know that much about it though. But he's basically saying the same thing as Augustine, so that, And then determinism is obviously everything in your life has been influenced by something. So everything happens for a reason, essentially. But yeah, we'll be going over like the illusion of free will. So if I have two books in front of me, one's Stephen King and one's George R. Martin. It's like, oh, which one do I choose? Like, I may have a free choice. Maybe I like both of them equally, but in somewhere in my life, it's been determined that I slightly prefer horror books over, what the fantasy book Game of Thrones is. Maybe there's something just more appealing to me about the book cover or the book description or blurb. Maybe I have some knowledge on the author. Maybe I know that Stephen King uh is a bit of a feminist, and I want to support him because I agree with his views. Something like that. But yeah, the choice between these two books is like determined from earlier on in my life. Um, but there is an interesting question. At what point do your choices start being determined? Because if we go by like full on hard determinism, right? John Locke type stuff. At what point do you know that you're like what point do you know like you're not making your own choices? Because to me, determinism's kind of based on the fact that it relies on past decisions. Or like you've always been destined to choose a particular thing because that's who you are as a person. But if but this hard and soft determinism from John Locke, which I'll touch on a bit, he believes in blank tabula, uh, whatever the Latin is for blank slate. He believes that you're born as a blank slate at birth, if I recall correctly. So I feel like for John Locke, in particular, there would be like nothing to influence your decisions pre-birth. So if like we truly had like determinism built in us, then it's like, you know, if you know nothing about yourself, how can you make decisions? Like as a kid, you're a kid, right? You don't know what you're doing. Like you you very much get the illusion of choice when you're a kid. Like if my parent takes me to a shop, you know, then they'll probably point out the girls aisle. Disclaimer, I'm non-binary, so this is terrible for me. They'll point out the girls aisle, and then I'll have the choice from the girls aisle. But I might not ever see the boys aisle, or maybe some other toys that may not even be in these aisles. So there's the illusion of choice. They're saying, "Oh, get whatever you want," but not that kind of thing. Like, if I get a choice between a Barbie and like a Cinderella, it's like, oh, you can have one or the other. Make your choice. But in actuality, there's like a billion other dolls that I could have, billion other toys that they haven't even considered. Like, there's this notion as when you're a kid, you get influenced by other people, but that's how you build as a person, which is interesting. Because when I was a kid, I was annoying. Very, very annoying. I'm annoying now, to be honest. But when you're a kid, you don't know what you're doing. Like, at school, I was the one kid who would be irritating. Like, it's no wonder I had, like, no friends. Okay, I lie. I had friends. But it's like, I was just bad at interacting with people. Like, if people were playing together and they were like my friends, I couldn't just walk up to them and be like, "Oh, can I play too?" I think that probably shows how introverted I am. Like, I felt awkward even asking to play. But and not to go on a tangent, I've always felt awkward about novice things, like saying please or thank you. Um, or sorry, I just feel awkward. It's like, I want to say this, but it's not in my character to do so. Anyway, not going on a tangent. So when you're a kid, it's just, yeah. And then you grow from this, so now I'm an adult and I can make my own choices. So I feel like I'm on a bit of a slant. Yeah. Okay. Stop slanting, please. Thank you. So, now that I'm adult, I guess I could make more informed choices, but arguably the choice that I make will have been influenced by the past. So, if I were to choose a toy now, I guess I could choose a boy toy. That makes no sense. I hate this. I guess I could choose a toy that's meant for boys, or quote unquote boys. But that would be influenced by my past experience of always being given girls' toys. So there's a lot about it. So I guess whilst we're on the topic, I'll talk about biological determinism and psychological determinism. It doesn't help that in my little book thing I wrote determination by accident, because I'm trying very hardly not to say that. So biological and psychological determinism. They're basically just biological's like you're influenced by like your gender or your hormones or like your DNA, and then like your psychological determinism is very much like what I just described with the toys, like the society that expects us to make a choice kind of makes that choice for us when we're young, and then that influences us later on in life. Like, I have pink curtains. You could say, oh, it's because you were born a girl. In actuality, my sister chose those curtains. I just kept them because, you know, in my eyes, curtains are expensive, and there's no point me getting new curtains when they function perfectly fine. Like, just things like that. Um, you could say that I was determined not to care, psychologically, but I'd argue this was more biological in that I think more logically. I feel like it's a very cliche thing to be like, oh yeah, I think really logically, therefore I'm smart. Yeah. It's just how I function. Um, don't know why. Just who I am, I suppose. So there are reasons why we make choices, but it's never full determinism in my eyes. Like, I think John Locke was really close to getting it because he used an analogy called the locked room analogy. And with this analogy, he said, one day you just randomly wake up in a locked room, but you don't know it's locked. Like, there's nothing in it, and the door's there, but you decide, I'm not gonna try the door because I'm choosing to stay in the room. You know, I mean, at this rate, I'd probably stay in the room because capitalism. But, you know, it's like you're in this room and you don't try the door to see whether it's locked or not, but you say, I'm gonna stay in this room no matter what. And you, in your mind, you think you've got the choice between leaving and staying. You chose to stay, but in actuality, the door is locked and you can't leave. So it's the illusion of choice. And I think he was very close to understanding it. A lot of people who've read this argument have criticized it that, oh, you know, it's too simplistic. I agree to some extent. Like, obviously, life isn't a series of, like, you're in a room and you don't open the door. You know? It's like, how can I apply that to my choice on what uni I go to? Actually, I have a little anecdote about that with free will and determinism. So now I'm gonna go off topic. So the thing is, when I was applying to uni, and I didn't get into any of them because my grades weren't as expected. I went through something called clearing, and if you're in America, and you might not know what this is, but this is basically when you've applied to your unis, you haven't gone into any of them, so now you need to go through the process of applying to other unis who will accept you based on your grades or whatever, you know? So I called about 6 or 7 unis saying, these were my grades, these were my GCSE grades, and I spent my day doing that. But I made the choice to do accounting, which made me go to a different university. I could have also chosen the course I'm doing now at this uni at that time, but I didn't. Because in my mind, I was like, okay, I'd rather have maths as a career. And then I did accounting, and I was like, yeah, I don't like this at all. So after about 3/4 of the year, I just dropped out, and then I reapplied to do philosophy at the uni that I'm doing now. So if I had applied for philosophy, ethics, religion at this uni, I would have been determined to end up there anyway, right? So, you know, then there's just a little anecdote. Anyway, I'm gonna get on to the main bit of predestination and determinism. I say main bit, the other stuff is relevant, but this is the main thing I wanted to talk about. So, St. Augustine, he was an Archbishop of Canterbury, and everything. Really religious guy, but also very famous philosopher. I think he mainly. How do I describe him? Like, he's done a lot of topics. I can't remember what we looked at him in specifically, but his name comes up and you're like, oh yeah, that guy. Um, so yeah. Anyway, his argument uh, revolves around the doctrine of original sin. So this is predestination. So if you're unaware, in the Bible, you have the story of Adam and Eve, and you know, God makes the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He tells them not to eat from it. Eve gets coerced by the snake, and she eats the fruit. The fruit. Um, Everything goes bad. Humans get cast out of the Garden of Eden. 8. And that was the first sin committed by mankind. So his argument is basically speculating around this idea of original sin. From its bare essentials, you know, original sin seems okay to me. But the other things that Augustine says, actually, it's interesting. So according to Augustine, I think he's trying to say that because Adam and Eve were in this garden of Eden, and if you read the Bible, it says, in the beginning, God saw what he created and it was good. You know? Which is funny because the tree of knowledge of good and evil is only half good, and, you know? So the idea is everything he made was good, and everything was made perfectly in God's image, like Adam and Eve kind of put himself into them, I guess, to an extent. So the idea that everything was good and everything was made perfectly, Adam and Eve couldn't have committed this sin. But again, I'm gonna get off topic. I don't think this is what Augustine is actually getting at. This is how I interpreted it. That's hard to say. Because in my opinion, by saying that everything that God's made is good in like Genesis, kind of goes against the nature of Genesis, because in the Bible you get introduced to Satan as the serpent who's somehow gotten into the Garden of Eden. I guess the snake's just like the little devil on our shoulder, right? It's meant to represent like, oh, you should do that, you know? It's like it's their very first temptation and they do it, you know? But in their defense, they had no experience of disobeying God in the past. They didn't know what was gonna happen. Like, sure, they could have just obeyed God's orders and not ate from the fruit of the tree and said to the snake, no, I won't do that. But, because we're free will moral agents, or supposedly free will moral agents, uh, we would have chosen to do that. But the whole idea of the free will in this scenario, there isn't a lot of it. Like, the idea is humanity may have been built with like certain things in them. And I think this is more plausible. Like in the Quran, it talks a lot about resisting your animal like desires. And other philosophers have said this as well, like J.S. Mill in utilitarianism. You know, you have to avoid, you have to avoid your lower pleasures. So instead of resorting to like sex outside of marriage, which, if you could just have sex anywhere you wanted, then that would be animal like, and we have to resist that. If, I get like other animal like features, like I guess being dirty, like a lot of things in the Quran is like, oh, being clean is great. If you know anything about Islam, they wash themselves 5 times a day. Um, you know, the prayer thing, wudu. Um, so, anyway, Augustine said, because of this I forget how you say it, concupiscence, this is something that we all just have in us. And it's not a sin to have this feature, but it does definitely affect humanity's ability to choose good and resist evil. Because if you look at the things that are like kind of outlawed in the Bible, like drinking, gambling, stuff, no normal stuff like that. You may be obliged to choose alcohol because you have poor judgment. Anyway, so we all have this thing in us. It's basically the idea that Adam's sin has passed down and we're all born with it. And this is the idea of like baptism. So if you don't know why people get baptized, it's basically because we have the original sin on us when we're born. Like when we're born, we automatically have this original sin. So this is Protestants who believe this, I think. Yeah, it's Protestants. So you're damned to be a sinner before you're born. This is very unconventional in terms of religious beliefs. Because other sects of Christianity, and I won't name them specifically because I'm bad and I haven't researched this, but definitely in Islam and definitely in Judaism, I think, you have to be a certain age before, like, your sins or your, like, good deeds get, like, put against you. I think in Islam it's, like, 10 or, like, around that age where you're, like, becoming aware of what's right and what's wrong. Because when you're a kid, you don't have a good idea. Like, people just tell you what's good and expect you to do it. Like, so in their belief, kids are just sinless. And you'll do a lot of things as a kid that are stupid, that you can't really control because it's being directly influenced by your parents. So, yeah. So, a lot of people think this idea is bullshit. I don't think I'm meant to swear. Maybe I'll mark this as mature or something because I mentioned sex and one swear word. But yeah. It's just weird. Like, people don't like the idea of sin being passed down through the family tree. Like, if my great 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 granddad murdered 10 people, does that mean that in my DNA or whatever, I'm gonna murder 10 people? You know? Like, does it get passed down? Of course not. If my dad is on trial and then he dies, the court don't say, "Alright, Eden, come up, you're gonna be sentenced instead," because that's stupid. And that's what a lot of people say. But anyway, Augustine talks a lot about the power of the elect. Now, this is a strange concept. So, the idea of like being an elect is basically God has chosen people, you know, way before they're born, but he's basically predestined certain people to be the elect. And what the elect basically is that you're a good little Christian and you will go to heaven no matter what. That's the basic idea. So God has chosen the elects and he's also chosen the reprobates, you know, the sinners. So no matter what you do in your life, you will always go to heaven or hell before you've done things. And I think this is because God has kind of planned out your life. God knows what you're gonna do. God is omnipotent and omniscient, whatever. So he can look at people's individual lives and be like, you're going to hell, and you're going to heaven. Because before he's made you in his likeness, and like, he knows what you're gonna do in your life before you've done it. So, this is just the idea that whatever you do in your life has already been thought out by God. And this is very unfair, according to a lot of people. Because if free will did exist, this would be more fair. Because the idea of God and the idea of like judging people is that he's judged people on their actions. And these actions are of their own free will, and they make these choices because they can. Like, the Bible's there as a guideline, or like the Quran or the Torah, whatever your religion is. That's there as a guide. Sorry, my dog is barking. How many podcasts have a dog barking in them? Anyway, whether you act on the Bible or not is entirely up to you. You might say it's a load of crap. You might say, yeah, it's a great book. I follow it. I pray 10 times a day. You know. So, if God is predetermining people's lives, then like, what's the point in life in the first place? Because if we're really here for a test to see if we're loyal or not, which is also a load of crap, it's just like, why put humanity through arduous tests that have tons of pain, tons of suffering, that may or may not be God's fault? I'm a religious apologist, so I won't go into that. But it's like, what is the point of making people if okay, imagine, okay, I won't say imagine you're God, but like, being God would be weird in this scenario. Because if you've made angels, and we've kind of speculated that, oh, God's made humanity because he didn't like how angels had no free will, right? He wanted to make humans so that they would make choices, you know? So if God made us, it would be weird for him to make humans and then predetermine everything that we do. I'd feel like I'd much rather God gave us the choice and he knew what choices we were gonna make, but like, he wasn't influencing us in any way. So by calling us the elect and reprobates, Augustine, that's not it. It's not it. So it's just like, I'm unsure if I have free will or not, but I know for a fact, if God is all-knowing, I can live with that. And God can make anything happen. I don't think, in my opinion, he would go through all this effort to you know, to make humanity, to make over 7 billion people, just to not give them free will and just to say, yeah, you're going to hell, you're going to heaven, way before anything happens. And with other things like the Day of Judgment, why would the Bible have the Day of Judgment in it if God already knew where everyone was going? Like, the idea in Islam is like, you get given a book and it measures your good deeds and your bad deeds. It doesn't make sense. Like, why go through the Day of Judgment if God's already... I don't get it. Anyway, I asked last week for people to DM me. No one did. So I asked in a Discord that isn't my own, and I should have asked in my Discord, but I did not. So I said, do humans really have free will, or is behavior all predetermined by something? And I got 2 responses. Amazing. So I honestly think we do have free will. It doesn't feel right to say that we are all just ones and zeros following an order in life. For example, I'm typing this up and I can just letter spam because I wanted to, not because I was forced to or had an exterior force making me do it. Obviously, your upbringing plays a factor in how you react and act to stuff, because all those factors play perfectly for me to be typing this answer at this very moment. But all those things were my own decision, and the free will decision of others have affected me. I think this is a good point. Yeah, a lot of people take this middleman way of explaining it, which is fine. It's fine to middlemen sometimes. But they're basically saying, look, the free will argument isn't saying that we're not influenced whatsoever, because that's bullshit. Yeah, okay, this is being rated mature. Like, like, it makes sense. Of course we're influenced. That's just in human nature to be influenced by things. So this is fine. I don't really have a response to it. Because like I said, I'm not sure where I lie. I think I'm more like Locke. I think we have the illusion of choice. I honestly think it'd be fairer if God knew what decisions we were gonna make because He made us and He knows what we're gonna choose. That's not saying that we don't have a choice. We're gonna choose certain things, but God just knows in advance. That to me feels fair. But what isn't fair is predetermining someone's outcome in heaven or hell before they're born. I don't think that's fair. I don't think if God is omnibenevolent, then He would not do that, in my opinion. There's not much reason to. So yeah. Someone also said, I think humans do have free will. We just don't have the means or mobility to enact our will to such an extent. This is also interesting. Because what it's saying is, yes, we do have free will, but it's a very small portion. Like, if I wanted to just become the president of the United States out of my own free will, obviously I'm very limited by that because one, I'm not a US citizen, and two, I'd have to go through the whole democracy proceedings, I'd have to get voted in, I'd have to be a senator for, like, I can't just be anything that I will, because that's dumb. But if I worked at it, maybe I could get into politics and become the UK Prime Minister instead in the future. But that's only if I wanted to. Like, if I'm passionate about something, then I'll work towards that and try to become that. Like, right now, I'm passionate about philosophy, so I'm working towards becoming a lecturer in the future at some point. Like, I, yeah, I also like this because it doesn't feel like a cop out argument. It's like, of course we have free will, just not on a large scale. And then I think both these arguments were these people who very kindly inputted. It makes sense. I don't disagree with it. I think they've put it very nicely as people who may not interact with philosophy a lot. These were solid arguments. But yeah. I think that's gonna be the end. Next time, I wanna talk about other stuff. I think I said last time what I have planned, but some recent things I've thought about. I might go on a rant about the trolley. Let me write these down so I don't forget. Where's my pen? So, I want to go on a rant about the trolley problem. And I also want to go on a rant about cheating, specifically in speedrunning, because the dream situation is very funny. So I want to talk about that. But it won't just be speedrunning, it'll be like the Olympics and like gambling, you know. Just talking about people cheating, so cheating. Why do people cheat when there's no gain? Like, people cheat at like the smallest things. So it's like, why? If you have nothing to gain, then why? You know? So yeah, that'll be it for me. Hopefully this goes on YouTube, and hopefully I will add captions or a transcript or something like that. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.